Welcome back to an episode of Thinking That Matters. I am here, as you can see, at our Powerful Women Growth Group, and today I am actually going to be sharing our growth segment. We rotate that among the group, but I want to talk with us about navigating the seas of friendship. Just give you a moment to think about what I did there. So navigating the seas of friendship. I have had the privilege of calling some truly amazing women in my life friends, and I actually want to use their stories, our stories, to highlight 7 C's of the friends we need to satisfy like this, what I believe is a very deep-seated fundamental need that we all have in our lives, which is connection. Right? And that starts from the very beginning of the time that a baby is born. Skin-to-skin contact of a baby with its mother is incredibly important. And believe it or not, in women especially, we have a hormone called oxytocin. And the value of oxytocin is that it's what stokes a flame inside of us to connect with other people. And there's actually been a lot of studies shown for a husband and a wife, if they don't have a ton of physical contact, that for a woman, the less contact, the less she desires contact, because that oxytocin hormone begins to decrease, whereas physical contact actually helps to stimulate the development, or the production, I should say, of oxytocin. So women have a desire to have connection, and it's so important that we recognize that we do have this deep-seated need. And I love this. We often hear sayings about the value of friendship, but what does it actually truly mean to be a good friend? So for the viewing and listening audience, prior to starting this recording, we were having some conversation around what does it mean to be a friend? What does it mean to have good friendship? And I think it's worthwhile our thinking to ourselves, what does it truly mean to be a good friend? And how can we cultivate that relationship so that it's meaningful and ideally lasting? So Brittany, one of the things that she shared was this concept of a day one friend and a day two friend, where your day one friends are always talking about the good old days, and the day two friends are they're thinking about and talking about not only where we are now, but where are we going and what are we doing right now to get to where we want to go. It's a different type of friend, and in rare cases, maybe it's not rare, but in some cases, a day one friend turns into a day two friend, and that can be super, super sweet. I loved that thought process there. So I want us to navigate through the seas of friendship and really try to identify some qualities, or I should say define some qualities of what I would say true friends look like, sound like, are like in our lives. And here's the challenge that I'm going to say for each of us, that we also look at how can we embody these qualities ourselves, because I think that's an incredibly important principle, which is John Maxwell calls it the law of magnetism. You attract those who are like you, right? And so that idea of what do we want in our lives, and the goal is if we want these things in our lives, we need to be looking at how we need to exude them in our lives and in the friendships that we share. Now, this particular topic is very, very meaningful for me, and I want to kick us off by just saying that before Fred and I moved to Texas, we were very established in that Tampa area. We had already been there for a number of years. I think when we moved, I'd lived in the Tampa area for 20 years, between college, post-college, us getting married, all of those things. So I'd been there a really long time. And we had a lot of friends. We had friends that our kids were growing up together. We had friends because our kids go to the same school. We had friends because we were all at church together. We had friends that I maintained from when we were at the University of South Florida. Friends because I was a teacher. So we just had a lot of friends. And when we moved into Texas, part of what we heard often was, oh my goodness, you're gonna love it. The people are so friendly and it's just awesome. And then we got here and that actually was not how we felt about it. Culturally, for us, it was very different. We felt very alone and very isolated, and we felt like, literally, I think sometimes we would look at each other and go, what is going on? Did something happen to us when we moved? Because it felt so challenging to actually make friends. And so we had to wrangle with loss of friendship, right? Because you're no longer physically in the presence of people. You don't see them every Sunday or see them as a result of going to work, or your kids are no longer in the same school. Everybody's got their own lives happening, and you've got 20 hours between you and them. So we were dealing not only with the loss of friendship, we were also struggling with the lack of friendship here in our new place of residence. So this idea of friendship has become very important to me, and something that I clung to and I still think about regularly today is a very, very dear friend of mine. You're going to hear about her. Her name is Teresa. She's 20 years my senior. She spent a lot of time pouring into me, and something that she said to me that I still am anchored to is, she said, Elizabeth, the older that you get, the fewer the friends that you have. And, one, because maybe it's because of, some of you have said, we're growing and we're changing and people aren't growing with us. Sometimes it's circumstantially our situation has changed. But the older you get, the fewer the friends you typically are going to have. So let's look at these 7 qualities or characteristics of true friends that we also want to embody ourselves. Number 1, first C, is caring. We want friends who are caring, like people that really look out for you. They care deeply about your well-being. They check on you, right? I think Brittany had mentioned this, whether it's they recognize something, is everything okay? Like they're asking you, you seem off, or I haven't seen you in a while. So they're checking on you. Maybe it's the text in the middle of the day for them. They don't know exactly why they're texting you. They're just going, hey, I thought about you today and I wanted to see how you were doing. That's caring. That is caring. And I love this. They check on you when you're down. They celebrate your successes. They provide support in times of need. Caring is more than just being there. It's about actively looking out for the other person's interest. And so the friend that I want to share with you, that as I was thinking through, okay, who really exudes this quality among my small circle of friends, her name is Jackie Whitley. And she and I have known each other for over 20 years. We first met as a result of my previous business, selling jewelry, and really just ended up having this amazing experience that truly bonded us. Very similar to, since you brought up, Susan, David and Jonathan, from a scripture standpoint, a very similar type of bond. And she is now a colleague with me at Southwestern Consulting. And the number of times I can tell you that I remind myself that God sees me because Jackie sees me. Where I've gone through something incredibly difficult and challenging. I think about having to usher someone on to a better opportunity. And she had no idea what was going on. And next thing you know, I have an Amazon box that shows up at the house. And I open it up and she knows my love of hot tea. And it was this like super cool, clear glass teapot that had these like flowering tea things you put in it. So it's like a whole display, right? So you're getting to enjoy some herbal tea, but you get to enjoy the beauty of inside the teapot. She had no idea, but it really just spoke to me in that day of difficulty. You know, or the times that she will text and just ask, how are you? How are you doing? So caring, that's our first C. Number 2, second C, considerate. I think a friend that is able to be considerate is incredibly important. And I want you to think being mindful of timing, being mindful of how words and actions matter, how they can impact an individual. A considerate friend knows when to give you space, and they know when to come in, right? They're considerate of that dynamic. And the thing that I think is interesting about considerate friends, their sensitivity to our feelings and our situations, is if they're uncertain, they're willing to ask. That's how considerate they are, is rather than assuming, they'll ask. The friend that I wanted to share here is actually also my sister-in-law, Melody Mahusai. I have known Melody since she was in her getting her law degree at the University of Florida. She was actually the neighbor in the apartment complex to Fred and his brother Edwin. And the joke in our family is that when the guys moved in, and she started noticing them, she started going, okay, which one of them are single, right? It's between Edwin and Fred. Fred and I were already dating. And of course, she started dating Edwin during that same time. And they're, let's see, Fred and I'll celebrate 30 years next year, and they'll celebrate 30 years about a month and a half later in 2026. So we've all known each other for a very long time. But Melody is incredibly considerate and thoughtful, and she has a sensitivity, whether it's in her timing or in her words or just how she engages. And I'm super, super grateful that she has really demonstrated that over and over and over again. Third C, courageous. We need friends who are willing to face fear with us. Because have you all ever dealt with something that you feared, or that was a struggle or a challenge? I mean, we need people willing to face fear. And here's the thing, courage and friendship, it's about being willing to face those things together. I think courageous friends are the ones that say, I don't have the answers, but I'm willing to walk through it with you. I don't know how to fix this, but I'll walk through it with you. So it's having those courageous friends. It's also people who, I think another place where this courageous quality comes into play is that they're willing to stand up for you in tough situations. They're willing to have your back, or to take that bold step to speak up on your behalf. A courageous friend, I mean, not only do they show bravery on your behalf, but they inspire bravery within you. And I had two ladies that came to mind here. One, her name is Bridget Hammer. She and I were doing ministry together at the church, different roles, but she was always willing to have my back, to be courageous and bold and stepping up just to help me in facing challenging situations. And Meredith Jackson is the other name. She's probably 25 years my senior. I love Meredith. She was my executive ministry assistant. And she was such an advocate for me and for what we did. And she was so courageous and bold in her willingness to do it. And also just being able to watch her and navigating her own reality of being a widow, and she was married to her husband, I want to say 50 years. And when I began working with her. So again, we want and need friends who are willing to be courageous. Number 4, this is one of my favorites, Candidly constructive. I had to do 2 C's. I tried to do a couple of things, but I'm like, no, I like both words, so I use both words. Candidly constructive. I mean, we're talking about okay, does anybody have an honest and forthright person who's willing to speak the truth in love? Yeah, truth and love. Without tearing us down, right? So candidly constructive does not mean that we just speak whatever's on our mind in a negative way towards someone. We're willing to speak candidly and constructively. I think that's the importance of the word constructive. It's that it's rooted in honesty, which I think is a great cornerstone for any strong friendship. But it is being willing to tell someone what they need to hear, not what they want to hear. It's being able and willing to have invested enough time building relationship that you can call out when something doesn't seem right, or that's not like you, or help me to understand your reasoning for wanting to go in that direction. But it's being candidly constructive. Here's the thing I wrote, this kind of honesty, it helps you to grow, move forward positively, and become a better person. It's about providing thoughtful advice, helping you to see solutions rather than just problems. And someone had shared earlier that they had a friend that was no longer a friend who would call up every morning and just talk about the drama that was happening in their life. Well, a friend who's candidly constructive would look for an opportunity to give thoughtful advice where that's concerned to help a person see a solution. What we have to remind ourselves is not everybody wants to see a solution. They want to persist. But a candidly constructive friend is willing to provide thoughtful advice. And I love this, that the influence of a candidly constructive friend is uplifting and encouraging. And I want to share with you about Teresa Miller. I mentioned her earlier. Teresa and I were going to church together back in Florida. And she's an amazing woman, had a long career at Verizon, and she would be think of it as the play director, right, for our passion play for the church. And it was a massive production. And she was masterful at orchestrating it all. That's when we first started working together. And Teresa probably saw got it all together, independent, self-sufficient, always right Elizabeth, who was not afraid to exert her opinion or insert herself in the leadership roles, and probably shook her head on many occasions going, that girl. But here's what Teresa did. She was willing to speak the truth in love to me. It started in our connection there, but our relationship grew because what I finally began to see is, oh yeah, Teresa's lived longer than me. She actually knows more than I know. I know it's just so hard to imagine at the time in my 30s. But she was always and still is candidly constructive. And I love it. I can remember the time when Samuel was in kindergarten. He is our social butterfly kind of guy. He can talk very easily. And back in the day, they had this system of red means you were misbehaved, yellow means you got a warning, and green means you were great. Well, he came home on red a lot. And one day, it was multiple days in a row, he's on red. I'm like literally bawling on the way home. And I get on the phone with Teresa, I'm like, Samuel's on red again. And she's patiently listening to me. And then she delivers this truth bomb. So is Samuel being on red about Samuel's behavior, or is it, she's asked me about why I was crying. She goes, is it more about Samuel being on red, or is it more about how you think other people think of you as a parent? Well, because it really was about how I felt other people would think about me as a parent. Tough truth that I needed to hear at that season of my life. So we need friends who are candidly constructive. Number 5, Complementary. Friends who are complementary. And I mean this as there's different types of complement. This is complementary. A friend that enhances and balances you by bringing different strengths, different perspectives, different qualities to the relationship. Complementary. And really, this means that our friends who are complementary, they're going to have unique traits. They're going to have different abilities. But the differences actually allow us to work together harmoniously. And here's the thing that I think is important, non-judgmentally. Like, I can be okay that we are different, that you are unique, that you have a different set of skills, and see the value in it. We can respect each other's differences, but it creates a stronger, and I'm going to call it more well-rounded bond between these friends. And sometimes people would say they're friends who can do a great job of offering emotional support, right? Because if we're uniquely different, where I might be more emotionally sensitive, a friend who's complementary likely isn't going to have the same emotional sensitivity, right? So if I'm really struggling, a complementary friend is able to bolster me, strengthen me, give me a different perspective, which is super helpful. And the name that immediately, as I was working on this, that came to mind here is Heather Nolan. And man, I could spend a lot of time telling you about Heather. We met when I was 15 and she was 16. So we were high school best friends. She was in band, I was in band. We had so much fun together. We would ride to school together. Just so many aspects. She had a much different life than I did, and ultimately became a mom at 19, single mom at 19, and then married. And she became that day one friend who became a day two friend. And her daughter that she had at 19, Brooke, was diagnosed with cancer at 2. Went into remission, different cancer at 7, died at 8. Walked that journey with her. Again, very different, right? Different strengths, different experiences, different relationships. And then at 34, Heather was diagnosed with breast cancer and died at 38. But when I think back to someone who exudes this quality of being complementary, she still holds that spot, even though it has been so long. It's been so many years since I guess it's 16 years now this fall. But I truly believe that quality of being able to complement someone else in a positive way is so valuable for our depth of friendship. 6C, confidant. You need a friend that you can trust so deeply that you can share all the stuff with them, right? And you can do so in a way, Susan, you talked about authentically. I believe you said vulnerably, right? We need a confidant, a person who offers this safe, non-judgmental space where we can be open, honest, share the secrets, all of those things. They're a trusted advisor. They're a close friend. We are not worried about them sharing that with other people. That's a friend that's a confidant. Julie Smothers is who makes me think here. Julie and I remember when I first saw Julie for the first time, she has an operatic degree. And Fred and I were in church, and she was trying out for her very first solo in the choir, because we were all in choir together. And our boys were similar in age, and we have still, even though I've not seen her in a few years, we maintain close connection. I cheer her on she is a world travel agent. Like, she's got specialties in Ireland and other areas around the world. She's amazing at what she does, but she is a confidant, someone that I know at any time I can call her up and go, hey, here's what's going on. I need you to pray for me, or, just getting perspective where that is concerned. So we need those who can be confidants. And then number 7, we need friends who are committed. That's our C there. Friends who are committed. Like, deeply trustworthy. These are the people that stand by you, through the thick, through the thin, through the pretty, through the ugly. They are loyal. They're willing to go through challenges. And here's the thing about committed. I think sometimes committed is also about we don't agree as friends. Like, we don't agree. We're not on the same side of a situation or an issue. And we are still able to find a way to maintain commitment to the friendship. And my person here, this loyalty, this commitment for the long haul, is Kelly Parker. If you ever have heard any of my keynotes, I talk about Kelly. She's my friend that was always, she's a conflict avoider, and she'd be okay with me saying that. But she was always the person who would come to me and go, oh, so-and-so thinks you're so intimidating. And then she admitted later to me, this was early on in our relationship, that I intimidated her initially as well. Oh, go figure. It's, I have to work on it every day. But she is so committed. And we have now been friends for 23 years. I was her birth coach, right? She's watched our kids grow up and become adults. We're watching her kids grow up and become adults. She's got one that'll be a senior in high school next year. But it's like each year we go from day one to day two, right? I mean, it's just a constant renewal of how are we growing, learning, and becoming. And I'm so grateful for her commitment. And here's the thing. I didn't even get to friends that are compassionate, charitable, comforting, confident. I think we need friends who are confident because they will spur us to be more confident. We need friends who are contributors, right? They contribute to us. They contribute to others. I mean, so many C's that we could have here. But to have friends who embody these qualities, here's the thing. We must first be that kind of friend ourselves. And this whole thing that I wrote came out of a quote that I saw from Rick Warren, who wisely said, if you want friends like what we were just describing in your life, you have to be that friend first. You have to be that friend first. And so I would encourage you, take a moment to note which of the C's you would want to work on or to grow in. Would it be caring or considerate, courageous or candidly constructive, being complimentary, so you compliment the other person, bringing your own unique differences, a confidant, being committed? Which would you want to work on or grow in? Because here's the thing, I believe a true friend really blends many of these essential qualities. And so I am going to challenge each of us that you actually take time to write down friends that are important in your life and really identify whether it's one or more of these qualities, and take time to either text them, write them a note, call them up, and thank them for being that person, serving as that friend in your life. Show gratitude for how they've contributed to your life. Because I believe that when we're committed to building relationships, when we're really working to build mutual trust and this unwavering support, we respect one another, we trust one another, that we are more likely to be the friend that is caring, considerate, courageous, candidly constructive, confidant, committed, that allows us to connect with other women and build powerful bonds of friendship. Here's one thing I know. I truly do believe that powerful women are capable of building powerful bonds and making amazing friends in the process, and that the ripple effect of being the friend to others that we want to have in our life literally can transform the lives of others, the people that we come in contact with, but it also can transform our life as well. So let's commit to navigate the seas of friendship well. I appreciate those of you watching and tuning in. Be sure to share this broadcast or this episode with friends that are coming to your mind even now that you want to say thank you for being that friend for me? Because I'm certainly going to do it to share this with those people that I have named in this particular episode. So thanks so much. Remember, when you cultivate thinking that matters, you can live a life, and I would add, build friendships that matter.